nightmare is a very subjective thing, and at the same time, very fascinating. What to one person seems like a silly thing to be afraid of might just be another person's worst nightmare. However, there are some things that scare just about everyone, no matter who you are or where you come from. And one of those special fears is that of the unknown. No matter how it manifests, it's the fear of what we cannot see or comprehend that scares just about everybody, from getting lost somewhere to the inevitability of death itself. We're scared of the unknown even from our childhood, where the fear of the dark is common and the nebulously defined boogeyman haunts our nightmares. It's the fear of the unknown that keeps us safe from things we can't see coming, and that inspires many of the scary stories we tell around the campfire. Of course, we know they aren't real, but that doesn't stop them from creeping us out. But what if there really were a creature built from the very fabric of this fear, a being that preyed almost exclusively on us because of it? Not only that, what if it preyed upon our most common fears, those little doubts and dreads that haunt us all? The idea of going mad, of being stalked, the unknown, the dark. What if all you had to do to get its attention was simply know enough about it, and once it locked onto you, nothing could stop it? What would we call such a strange and inescapable being, such a frightening and unknowable creature built from the darkest depths of our own nightmares? No need to wonder, viewers. It already has a name, and it's already here.
Slenderman, Slenderman, all the children try to run. Slenderman, Slenderman, to him it's part of the fun. Slenderman, Slenderman, dressed in darkest suit and tie. Slenderman, Slenderman, you most certainly will die.
The Slender Man, as he's most commonly called, is a creepypasta entity usually described as a tall, extremely slender figure wearing a black business suit, a red or black necktie, and lacking a face entirely. He is commonly depicted as having multiple inhumanly long arms or tentacles, which he can extend at will, and has the ability to teleport and even be in multiple places at once. He is commonly shown standing in the background of photos, and he usually causes significant audiovisual distortion in any video taken of him. He usually stalks and kidnaps children, although he's not picky about teenagers and adults either. He's been blamed for fires, mass disappearances, and just about every childhood tragedy imaginable. The more you know about him, the more likely he is to start stalking you, and he is a very persistent hunter. Being his target can lead to sickness, paranoia, insomnia, horrible nightmares, and eventual insanity or death. The Slender Man was created in 2009 during a Something Awful forum thread titled Create Paranormal Images. In this contest, the goal was to create faked paranormal evidence that could be passed off as real. It was in this forum that one particularly devious and twisted goon by the name of Victor Surge created two separate images of a tall, faceless, multi-limbed entity standing in the background of old photos of children. Victor gave the explanation that shortly after, the children depicted in the photos all vanished without a trace. The creature so haunted the denizens of Something Awful that soon after, more goons created images of this strange, slender man, and it even began giving some of the forum goers nightmares. The photos were eventually posted to 4chan's x/message board, where Slendy, as he is now affectionately called by some, became a very popular character and further evolved in ability and form. Eventually, it got back to Something Awful, where a pair of appropriately enthralled goons approached Victor about creating an ongoing series about the monster. Victor granted them permission, and shortly thereafter, Marble Hornets, the first Slenderman vlog series, began uploading videos to YouTube, where it has remained one of the longest-running Slenderman series to this day. Other influential series, such as Everyman Hybrid and Tribe 12, soon followed. These three major long-running vlog series, collectively known as the Big Three, set down some of the first roots for the mythos as we know it today, and continue to inspire fans of the mythos. At the same time, many goons and X-Files were becoming converts to the newly formed fandom, and some of them began spreading the newly minted urban legend into in-character blogging. One of the first amongst this group was a blog called Just Another Fool, which cemented several important mythos aspects, and continues to strongly influence newer Slenderman blogs to this day. It was in this atmosphere that the concept of yet another element of the mythos, the proxy, was born. These poor souls were humans that the Slenderman had taken and brainwashed into his goons. although since then, this portrayal has been challenged, played with, and changed multiple times. You saw a less serious example of one in When Darkness Falls, my proxy character from my Slenderman Shadow LP. But one of the best known examples is To the Ark, sometimes called Masky, from Marble Hornets. Far more influential aspects than this have followed suit since, and the Mythos has covered so many ideas that it's difficult to understand what's going on between stories some of the time. From here, of course, the only place to go was mainstream, which Mythos fan Mark J. Hadley of Parsec Productions did in the summer of 2012, when he released the now well-known indie horror game Slender, The 8 Pages. The game's popularity was so great that it inspired numerous clones, fan films, derivative games, and the ire of many older Slender fans, who felt it failed to live up to the high standards for tall, pale, and faceless. However, it did draw in many new fans to the Mythos, including myself, and even inspired some to seek out the series that began building Slenderman into the nightmare he is today. So of course, with all of the in-character stuff and the realistic looking and feeling scenarios for many parts of the Mythos, the big question you might have is he real? And the answer is no, he is not real. You see, a big part of the Mythos is delving into it and pretending it really is true, and everything about it is designed just for that purpose. None of us fans have ever truly seen the Slender Man in the flesh, and neither have any of those annoying people who claim they really did see him. If Slendy were real and they actually did see him, they'd be dead and impaled on a tree somewhere by now. Plus, the Something Awful thread where Slendy was born is a pretty easy find, and even Victor Surge is pretty transparent about the fact that his nightmarish creation isn't real. So no, there's not really a Slender Man running around out in the woods, although that knowledge probably won't help you sleep any more soundly tonight. So, with all this material running around about the Slender Man, you might be wondering how he continues to scare and fascinate to this day, and why he's such an iconic creepypasta character. Perhaps you don't see why a faceless guy in a suit is supposed to be scary, and that's fine, but regardless of whether you actually fear the tall gentleman or not, the character does have some basic characteristics to him that make him a potent symbol of fear. Let's head deeper into the forest and take a closer look, shall we? And here's our creepy friend now, in fact. From the get-go, the first thing noticeable about Slendy is his facelessness. What we can say about this appearance is that it suggests anonymity, and even the lack of an identity entirely. The being doesn't have any eyes, which are what we use to gauge and understand a person. See, the human brain is actually really good at facial recognition, which is why we sometimes see faces where there aren't any and remember faces better than names. If you actually did meet someone with no face, you wouldn't be able to read them or know what they were thinking, because you couldn't recognize them. And that's a powerful source of uneasiness and fear right there. When we can't understand what something or someone is thinking, we don't know what their motives are, so we see them as frighteningly unknowable. And as said before, human beings really don't like the unknown much, because the unknown means danger. This neatly brings me to my next point, the uncanny valley. This term was first coined by Japanese robotics professor Masahiro Mori, and it basically says that, as a non-human object becomes more and more human-like, people will react favorably with it, as if it were a human being. However, once it starts becoming too human, people begin to get very, very disturbed, because the brain registers that thing as a very, very wrong human being. How does Slendy fit into this? Well, notice that he's approximately human-shaped and approximately human-looking, but we can instantly tell he's not human, based on several factors. This freaks us out because the Slender Man falls close to the uncanny valley. He's almost human, but not quite, and our brain doesn't like that one bit. Notice also Slendy's height. Depending on the source you ask, he can be anywhere from about 6 to 12 feet tall, and is usually depicted as standing at about 7 or 8 feet tall on average, although the true calculated average is about 9 feet. Why is this important to his creepiness? Well, think back to when you were a little kid in elementary school, and how the lockers in your school seemed humongous back then. And then, if you go back when you're much older, everything looks so much smaller and you wonder why. That was a trick of perception. The lockers were never that humongous. You were just really small in comparison. Now imagine how you'd react if you were to have that same very skewed perspective of the world for a day. You'd feel horribly vulnerable because you'd feel very, very small and very exposed. It's this vulnerable feeling that Slendy's height invokes, the perspective of a much bigger and more domineering adult looking down at a much smaller and more vulnerable child. Except you're the child here. And that, my friends, is a creepy, creepy feeling to have. Furthermore, our slender friend appears to be wearing a suit, which is a mark of not only the dominance of the adult world, but is incongruous with the rest of the being. leading to more of that creepy uncanny valley effect I mentioned earlier, the familiar made hauntingly, terribly unfamiliar. On the other hand, there's also the tentacle thing, and yes, before you ask, this section of the discussion is work safe. Ladies and gents, I want you to think about a spider, preferably the creepiest one you can think of. First of all, pleasant nightmares to those of you who hate spiders, and second of all, note that in some photos of the creature, he does appear to walk on his tentacles as if they're legs. So in other words, Slendy's more spider-like form in some of those photos might just be trying to invoke the creepy feeling many people get around spiders. People generally don't like things that creep around because they have more legs than them. They don't like the predatory, unnaturally quick movements a spider can have. And if you apply those to Slendy... Actually, you know what, let's all agree right now to not talk about spiders and Slenderman in the same paragraph ever again, because I'm pretty sure you and I both enjoy the ability to sleep soundly at night. And last but not least, there's the stalking aspect, which brings up the primal fear of being hunted or chased. Then there's the idea of Slendy taking children, evoking both the adult fear of losing a child and the concept of the boogeyman in the closet. Well, forest in this case. But no matter what fears the Slenderman brings about, they all ultimately stem from the fear of the unknown. It's why being scared of the dark is such a common fear for so many people, why H.P. Lovecraft's monsters and creatures continue to fascinate, and precisely why the Slenderman continues to horrify. The Slenderman, both in his behavior and appearance, literally is nothingness. He's literally the fear of the unknown, given a physical form in order to haunt us from afar, because there is nothing more frightening to us than nothingness. Except maybe spiders. Spiders aren't that much fun either. So, what is there left for me to say that hasn't already been said? Well, not much actually, except for this. There's so much more to this mythos than I could ever point out in just this one video, and I really wish I had time to discuss everything, but I just can't. Not when so many other people have done it so much better than I ever could. The lore about this character seriously goes so deep that you could start mining anywhere and never stop pulling out interesting theories and nightmare fuel. So if anything I've discussed in this or any of the other videos during this LP has piqued your interest into learning more about the mythos, then go out there and dig deeper. If you love psych horror and Lovecraftian horror just as much as I do, then I can promise you, you won't be disappointed by what you find. Just remember not to read or watch those stories all in one night, because sleep deprivation due to fear really sucks. And if you were by some chance somehow offended by my parody take on the mythos over the course of this LP, please don't take it personally. I never intended to insult any aspect of the mythos. In fact, I did it because I love the mythos and I want to see more people get into this crazy fandom. If you do ever want to engage in more serious mythos discussion, come join me on the Slenderhaven forums, where I go by Dark Shadows and am more than happy to talk about all things tall, faceless, and creepy. Or just send me a PM. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a forest to go walking in and some cryptic tapes to analyze. See you next time, and remember, he's watching.